John Hook's Newsmaker starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker. In 2021, over 2,000 Arizonans died of opioid overdoses. 26-year-old Ashley Dunn, sadly, was one of them. She purchased what she thought was an oxycodone pill that instead was laced with deadly fentanyl. The dealer that sold Ashley that fatal pill was sentenced to 2 years for distribution. Ashley's mother, Josephine Dunn, thought that her daughter's life was worth far more than a 2-year sentence. She fought a 3-year battle to pass the Ashley Dunn Act, named after her daughter. It enhances the penalties for fentanyl dealers. A first offense is a minimum of 5 years and a maximum of 15 years. Repeat offenders could face potential sentences of 10 to 20 years. Governor Hobbs signed that bill into law a month ago.
The Ashley Dunn Act signed into law in direct response to the fentanyl crisis.
She used 1 dose of one counterfeit Percocet tablet. She was poisoned by fentanyl on May 23rd of 2021.
Ashley Dunn was just 26 years old.
She died on May 26th of 2021 because my husband and I had to disconnect her life support. She was in intensive care for 86 hours.
Her mother, Josephine Dunn, still carries the pain that comes with losing a child so tragically.
I really cannot put a word to describe that pain. I can tell you that I have cried more than an ocean of tears.
Less than 24 hours after Ashley passed away, her mom was on the phone with the state representative.
It took almost 3 years, and here we are.
House Bill 2245 targets drug dealers found with 200 grams of fentanyl or more. For a first offense, the law will set a minimum of 5 years and a maximum of 15 years. Repeat offenders could face 10 to 20-year sentences.
Fentanyl is a problem that's causing generational trauma. And I don't think people understand that. I miss my daughter.
Josephine says more needs to be done to address the fentanyl crisis, including addiction treatment and education.
Legislation doesn't take away my heartache. Putting a drug dealer in jail doesn't make me stop crying. We've just got to get fentanyl off the street.
Ashley Dunn's mom, Josephine, joins me now. Thank you so much for being here. This has been a saga, a journey, total heartache.
Yeah. Yes. Hi, thanks for having me.
I wanted to ask you about your daughter. Can you, and it's the most painful phone call a parent can get.
It was about 1 a.m. We were awakened by the emergency room doctor. They spoke to my husband and asked if Mitch was Ashley's emergency contact. Mitch said yes, and the doctor had said, please come to the emergency room as quickly as possible. And I'm a registered nurse by trade. I'm retired now, and it's never good when the actual doctor calls. So we got up, got dressed, and went there, and when we arrived, Ashley was not in the room. She was out for a brain scan. And Ashley's little boyfriend was there and had given us her phone and kind of given us an explanation of what was going on, that it was actually a poisoning. I don't call it an overdose. I actually call it a poisoning because you don't overdose on fentanyl. Fentanyl is a lethal drug. It is a weapon of mass destruction. She was poisoned. She was actually deceived to death. She used half of a tablet that she believed was Percocet, and it was not. It was actually, in that half a tablet, was 5 milligrams of fentanyl.
And that's enough to kill a couple of people, right?
Yeah, two and a half people. 2 milligrams can kill one person. And Ash only weighed 93 pounds, so.
This is a scourge. 42 million pills were seized in Arizona last year. 70% of those contained a lethal dose. This is astonishing. We are Well, 70,000 deaths across the country from fentanyl and other synthetic opioids recorded by the CDC. That's almost a World Trade Center event every week.
Yes. If you add up all of the deaths from all of the wars that we've had more deaths from fentanyl than we've had from war.
Are you astonished that there isn't more outcry to get a handle on this, because we're killing our youth with this stuff?
I believe that there is a war right now. I mean, I said it when I testified in Washington. There is a war, and the weapon is fentanyl. And our youth is being killed. The age group from 18 to 45, the largest killer is fentanyl. It's more than car accidents, it's more than cancer, it's more than suicides combined. If you add the deaths of suicides, car accidents, and cancer last year, add all those deaths up, and from the ages of 18 to 45, we've had more deaths from fentanyl than those three things.
You just were not going to take this sitting down.
I'm not. No, I'm not.
As I understand it, when your daughter passed and you had to make the agonizing decision to take her off of life support, you made a phone call to Representative Quang Nguyen of Prescott Valley. What did you tell him, and what did you want?
Well, we disconnected Ashley at 3:33 p.m. on May 26th. I did not sleep all night. I had not eaten for 86 hours. I hadn't slept. I did not leave her bedside. All I did was cry. I actually have cried every single day since she died. I haven't stopped crying. So it was 6 a.m. and I know that Quang drives from Prescott Valley to the Capitol every day. And I have his personal cell phone number. I called him I waited until 6 a.m. I believed he would be in his vehicle traveling to the Capitol. And I called him and I demanded legislation, and I screamed and used foul language, and I cried. And I was belligerent, and I said, we absolutely must do something. And I will not stop until the dealer that sold my child drugs goes to prison. And that person that you were talking about earlier in the segment, she had 12 felony convictions. And she did go to prison. She did go to prison. I will not say her name because I am asking the Lord. I'm a Christian. I'm asking God to help me with forgiveness towards her. She did go to prison, and she finally, in December of 2023, she pled guilty to 3 felonies. She's actually in the Department of Corrections in Arizona now for 10 years. So she got 10 years. Finally.
Josephine, when you started this battle down at the legislature, there were some people kind of pushing back. They were saying that the law you were proposing or that you wanted passed was, I think they called it redundant, that manslaughter and additional charges could kind of cover this, that it was unnecessary. How did you finally break through with your argument that we need this?
Well, we still need that. We need drug homicide legislation. We do. The manslaughter law does not cover drug homicide events. It doesn't. There are many people at the legislative body that do not understand that. But we do have to start somewhere. So the law that was very recently passed states that if you're selling 2,000 pills or 200 grams. Now, let me just explain something to you. 7 out of 10 pills are lethal.
Yes.
So if you're caught with 2,000 pills, you're not just a drug dealer. You're actually a serial killer.
Josephine, I don't want to overly politicize this segment because it's really a story about your fight for justice for your daughter. But you did testify before Congress, I believe in January, in the Mayorkas hearings.
I did, yes.
And you were pretty pointed about where you think some of the blame lies here.
Yes. I am very, very, very angry about the border. I am very, very angry that China is allowed to provide poison to Mexico to create pills to profit by murdering a generation of people in our country.
You called it a weapon of mass destruction.
I will always call it a weapon of mass destruction, yes. So when you shoot bullets and kill our youth, it's a war, right? These are bullets, but they're not being shot in a gun. They're being sold or given out for free. I'm not sure if you've been to a methadone clinic, but at times outside methadone clinics, there are drug dealers that give out fentanyl tablets for free. So you could try it and get hooked, and then you're buying it.
Unbelievable. Josephine, one more thing before I let you go. And thank you for your time. You've been very gracious.
You're welcome.
What have you learned from all this?
I've learned several things. I've learned that our country needs to focus on closing the border. Our country needs to focus on providing mental health services to American citizens. Our country needs to focus on addiction services for American citizens. I've learned that American citizens do not get what they need, and we are providing for illegal immigrants. I've learned that our jails are filled with people that need services, not criminal punishment. I've learned that there are people like the person that murdered my child that had 12 prior felonies, 12. And she was out on the street selling drugs, and my daughter died for $5. My daughter lost her life over $5. I've learned that pharmaceutical companies, prescribe oxycodone, Percocet, whatever it is, opioids, and they don't attach a bottle of Narcan, a unit of Narcan with it. There are elderly people that get hip surgery. They should go home with Narcan. Because when you're high on hydrocodone because you're in pain and you've forgotten that you just took it an hour ago, you could accidentally overdose at 70 years old.
Yeah, and it happens all the time.
My county, Yavapai County, last year in 2023, 16 people over the age of 65 overdosed. Why is that? Why can't we have Narcan free? I don't understand that.
Josephine, I appreciate you taking the time, and
Yes.
tremendous sadness and sympathy for you and your family over the loss of your daughter,
Thank you.
Ashley.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I appreciate it, and you fought a good fight down there.
I'm not done fighting.
I know that.
This is not the end of me. There's a lot more I'm going to be doing. You'll see.
Josephine Dunn, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless you. God bless.
You too. Bless you as well. We are back in a minute on Newsmaker. Welcome back on Newsmaker. We're going to talk water, which is such a huge issue, obviously, in a dry desert. And Arizona has been blessed with 2 back-to-back really solid winters, and the water situation has markedly improved. But our greatest strength when it comes to water in the desert was the brilliant planning by several pioneer Arizonans and political leaders who had the foresight to create an ingenious series of waterways and dams that puts the valley on, frankly, better footing than many states when it comes to protecting our water supply. And managing all of this, of course, is Salt River Project, which has been bringing water to the valley since 1903. SRP water expert Charlie Ester joins me now. Charlie, you did a flyover of the watershed just a couple of days ago. We tagged along, and at least for right now, we look like we're in pretty good shape for the next couple of years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, you mentioned we had 2 wet winters. 2 years ago was very, very wet. We ended up actually releasing quite a bit of water into the canal or the river system through Phoenix. This year, surprisingly, we thought it might be even wetter than it actually was. It was almost perfect. Right now, Roosevelt's 97% full. The Verde side's getting up there, you know, 3/4 full, and everything is just in fantastic shape. And we didn't have to release any through the Phoenix area.
Yeah, so nothing down the salt that I guess does give you some recharge for groundwater. It's not lost. I mean, water is really never lost if you really think of it that way.
No, it truly isn't. You know, one thing we all need to consider is that we have all the water on Earth that we're ever going to have. And that's why it's so important that we manage it very carefully and use every bit wisely.
Okay, let's take a flight. This is after takeoff. You guys are going over the CAP, which is just a marvel, of course. But, you know, everybody thinks about the CAP and the depletion of the Colorado River. But as you head up, you're going to see us go over the CAP, and then you're going to get into the Verde River, which is one of our main tributaries. We've got the Salt and the Verde. Just tell us what you're seeing out there right now.
Well, right now you're looking at the Central Arizona Project Canal, and that's certainly very important. We've now jumped to the Verde River, and you see the really vibrant riparian corridor along that system, a very healthy river here below Bartlett Dam through the Fort McDowell Indian community. And surprisingly, this area of the river hosts a plethora of wildlife. I mean, it has numbers of breeding bald eagle pairs, and there's wild horses here. It's just amazing how much wildlife has flocked to this riparian corridor.
You know, one of the things that we've talked about before, and it is just a stunning number, that we are using roughly the same amount of water right now in the valley that we used in 1957, when the population, I think, was under 1 million. That is an unbelievable figure, and when people hear it, they think you're lying to them.
No, it is truly amazing that our water demand has come down dramatically over the last 30 years or so. And that is one of the reasons why the Phoenix area, in my opinion, has one of the most reliable and sustainable water supplies of any big city in the West.
Yeah, and then, you know, you juxtapose that on some of these hyperbolic headlines from East Coast publications. I don't know if these guys haven't traveled out here. The Atlantic headline a couple of years ago, when will the Southwest become unlivable? And they're talking about the water issue, and I'm looking at this going, what are you guys talking about?
Well, you know, Ron, certainly when you talk about the area that the Salt River Project serves, it truly is sort of an independent system all on its own. We're centrally located in Arizona. The rim country and the central mountains of Arizona provide us with an abundance of surface water. And, you know, I don't agree with those headlines, but there's just a modicum of truth in the fact that there are some water issues outside of central Arizona. I'm not about to say that there aren't any, but we are truly standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to water in Arizona. And I'm not convinced, and I am very positive that any issues that we have, any of these constraints that we have the brilliance in central Arizona's leaders to overcome those problems.
Yeah, I agree completely. And the big reason that we're using the same or less water than we did in 1957, even with explosive population growth, is exactly because of that. Back in 1957, almost 80% of our water use was for agriculture. Agriculture uses a tremendous amount of water.
Sure
you
does.
replace ag with residential, and your numbers of usage come way, way down.
Yes, it certainly does. But, you know, even today, agriculture uses a little bit more than 70% of all the water use in Arizona. It's still a very valuable part of Arizona's economy, and I believe it needs to stay as well.
No, no doubt. And yeah, and some people kind of demonize ag because it's so heavy on water use. Quick question. Some of the chip manufacturers that are coming in, the big one, you know, that's coming in from Taiwan, what about the water use for that? And is that impactful that we say, wow, that's going to use a lot of water, but as we talked about before, this could all be recycled, right?
Absolutely. These semiconductor plants are experts at recycling water, sometimes as many as 10 times through their process before they need to replenish with new water. And I would like to point out that, for example, the Taiwan semiconductor plant in the North Valley, if that area were to have urbanized and say we put houses in there, it would use far more water than the semiconductor plant. So yes, it's going to use quite a bit of water, but it's a big industry. It brings in high-paying, high-tech jobs, and I think overall it's a definite benefit for Arizona.
Charlie, can that water be reclaimed? When I know they need really clear, pure sources of water for what they do for chip manufacturing, but once they do their processing, that water can be recaptured, right?
Yes, absolutely. It would take a little bit more treatment, but you know, there's always a way to get water back to a usable state.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about, we're going to take a little more flight here.
This is Horseshoe Reservoir.
Oh, that's Horseshoe. Okay.
And that's the spillway that you're looking at. Horseshoe right now is about 80% full, believe it or not. And it's a great site. This is a usual site for SRP. You can actually drive out there as a member of the public,
right
near the dam, and actually walk underneath that spillway that you see and onto the crest of the dam. This is Roosevelt, 97% full. That's why you see virtually no shoreline exposed there. Isn't that a beautiful sight?
It is. I mean, people, my brother was flying in the other day from Salt Lake. He goes, man, you guys have some serious lakes out here.
Like,
yeah, we do.
This reservoir alone holds over 1.6 million acre-feet of water, which is over 2 times the amount of water that SRP serves in a year.
It's incredible. Charlie, what is the cautionary tale here? Because obviously we become very attuned to being on I would almost call it a crisis footing all of the time. And maybe that's good. It makes people really think about their water use. Conservation has made a difference, has it not?
Oh, it definitely has. And I think the primary thing that we need to consider here is that whether we're in a wet period now, the next drought is coming. So yes, it is very important for us to always plan for drought. Even though the reservoirs are full right now, we're already thinking about what if this coming winter is dry, or what if the next 3 or 4 are dry? How are we going to get through that? Right now, we're not too worried because, you know, our lakes are full.
Yeah.
But we always have to plan for that, and conservation among all of us is always important.
Well, this is the thing. We have had in the past, and I think the last big one wiped out the Hohokams, 100-year drought. You get that, that can really be a problem. So when we got into this 20-year drought, I'm sure all of you guys were saying, okay, it's a 20-year drought, and maybe it's a 30-year drought. What if it were a 100-year event? And we'd still have water for that.
We would still have water for that, because now I'm not saying that we know the future. Obviously we don't, but we have done some tree ring work with the University of Arizona that goes back nearly 800 years. And what's nice about those I don't want to say there's anything nice about a drought, but during those droughts, there's always a wet year thrown in there. Maybe every 5, 7, 8 years, there's a big wet year. And SRP's reservoir system is uniquely built to be able to refill during those rare wet years during a drought. So even if we were to get into a much worse drought than we have had in the last 25 to 30 years, I'm still positive that we'd be able to get through it.
SRP water expert Charlie Ester. I feel a lot better after this conversation.
I'm glad.
I appreciate the time. Thank you for taking us up, and continued good work. You guys have done a heck of a job.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, Charlie Ester. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker.